All
Hello,
right,
Ryan.
James, you with me? Hey, there we go.
Yeah, I can.
All right, let's rock and roll. Thanks everybody for joining us for tonight's FlipLogic Real Estate Show, where this is a 1 hour Q&A format. We'll run for an hour or until all questions are exhausted. You can get your questions in by the Q&A feature there or the chat box, and we'll answer them in the order that they are received. So with that being said, I've got James here to join and help lead me through the show here, because we're actually going to go through we're going to go through a live lead and deal of ours. And then we'll cut back and see if anybody has any questions, so we can answer those too. So while we're doing this, we hope to help, give you some ideas for some questions that you may have. So with that being said, let's dive right in, James. The deal that I'd like to start with and talk with this evening is 1933 South Spalding Avenue. It's in Los Angeles, right? And I'll pull it up here so everybody can kind of get an idea of, actually, I'll just pull it up on Zillow. I'll pull it up on Zillow, and then you can also see what it looks like from a street view here in the comps. So I'll zoom right in. Actually, that's the comp. So I'll hit that there and I'll pull it up here. So here it is. It's, to give some context, it is a inheritance property, right? Actually, the woman who lived in there did pretty well. She lived to be 102 years old. She just passed away recently. The trustee, correct me if I'm wrong, James, is the trustee a family member, like a daughter or something?
No, not a family member. It's actually like the neighbor, like somewhere on the street.
Okay. Okay, so the trustee's a neighbor, and they're helping handle the estate for the sale. So somehow a realtor got a hold of it. He threw it up for $850, right? And after running our numbers on the property, just to kind of give everybody an idea, the subject property is a 2-bed, 1-bath. It's really only permitted for 1,200 square feet. But there is a bonus room that was added on without permits. It's kind of a funky add-on because it's a step down, and it's got like drop ceiling. So it's not permitted, but it's on there. So for it to become permitted living square footage, obviously you're going to have to go through the city for that, right? You're going to have probably a plan drawn up. It's going to have to get submitted. It's going to have to get approved. And then permits will have to be paid for, for it to go on the county tax scroll, so then it can be added in as living square footage, right? We can't buy based on that, right? We got to buy based on what is, right? And so, of course, the seller, the agent, they're all selling the dream. We had to bring them back down to reality. The reality is the home, if it's 1,200 living square footage as is, it's probably only going to be sub $1 million ARV, right? It's going to be in the 9s, right? And the way that we know that as well is because we did go ahead and market blast it to our investors. Here's the marketing tab where you can enter your property blurb. This is what it'll populate and look like once you've done your analysis. All the numbers pop in automatically, and same with the comps. And so that kind of gives you an idea, but I'm going to go to analyze so we know. So the 1.1 is not going to work, right? We thought it's highest and best condition. You get the bonus room permitted, right? Creates about 1,550 living square footage. Comp across the street sold for that, but nobody wants to buy based on that. If they want to go through the trouble of getting that square footage permitted, then obviously that's bonus upside, but we're not able to buy based off that, and we're not able to sell it to our investors based on that. Here is kind of what the common feedback has looked like. Let me just drop the numbers here a bit. So 975, is it 975? Is it not? Everybody's kind of coming up with their own conclusion on that. Same with the repair costs. Repair costs are typically going to be around $40 a foot. But because of this neighborhood and the floor plan, that's going to need to be reconfigured to probably add a bath and a bedroom. And because it is closer to $1 million, everybody's thinking it's going to be closer to $60 a foot. On our little guide here, awful could be, you can see it there, $20. That's obviously on the low side. Very inexpensive home. Maybe rental grade finishes, right? When you have an ARV closer to $1 million, guess what it's not going to be? It's not going to be closer to rental grade finishes. It's going to be closer to higher end finishes. Higher end finishes cost more. So instead of being like $40 a foot, 35, $40 a foot for median home, this is above median price. This is going to be, it's going to require more designer type finishes, and more planning and more design. So it's definitely going to be closer to 60 to $75 a foot. If this was 75 a foot, you can see how it can push you up closer to 115. So let's just round it off. We'll call it 100,000, about $65 a foot for even numbers. So at 975, which is $629 a foot for the ARV, 100,000 for repairs, 4 months for the hold time. We've got 80% for a mortgage. If you were going to put 20% down on the purchase price, 20% down for your repairs, and you were going to finance the rest of that, like through a hard money lender. Lending Home is a common one that I see a lot of guys use. Lending Home, I think they're like lendinghome.com. They require 20% of the purchase price, and I think they'll finance 100% of the rehab. And then you've got others like First Rehab lenders, where your financing will be a little higher, but they'll actually finance 90% of the purchase price and 100% of the rehab. So we just automatically have 80% populated because it creates a budget for it, and everybody's going to vary. Maybe we've got one of our investors who may just buy it all cash, and then we've got other guys who, of course, they want to leverage and put some money down. So here we go. So that basically, and if I reset our rehab ROI, based on these numbers, it puts our exit at 716 for where a rehabber would want to have it at. We've got a committed investor of ours who will close this Friday at 700,000, right? And then James, I know that you were pegged with the task of, and I want to go to our chat box real quick. Does anybody have any questions so far? If you have any questions, use the Q&A feature, the chat box. You can even give us some good feedback if you're liking what you're seeing, or if you have any questions, please get those in, and I'll be sure to get to those. But James was pegged with the task on this one just recently. One of the comps here. This one was a flip. It's the lowest of them all. It's also the smallest. And did you add this one in, James?
I don't believe I did. I think you may have added that one in.
Maybe I did. 1,700 square feet. But
I did the rest.
That one's 697 square feet away. So it's like, so it's right here. Okay.
Yeah, all the ones on the side.
All right. And so we called on this guy right here because this was a flip.
Yeah.
This one here on Spalding. And I'm sure it goes without saying, how do you know this one's a flip? Well, because if you look at the price history on it, not only can you tell from the photos that it's in a remodeled condition, but if it's been bought and sold within 12 months, it's a flip. And obviously it was purchased in April. Don't you love it when the screen just runs away on you like that? It was purchased in April, obviously rehabbed because they put it back on the market in 60 days. It went pending in almost another 30 days and then sold in another 30 days. So from door to door, that was 4 months, right? And that's what we've got here in our analysis. We've got 4 months hold time on here. So, real quick, since we know that one was bought and sold, obviously 740 sold for 910. We reached out to that investor and we sent it to him at 740. James, were you able to get any feedback from him so far?
No, not yet. I had called him, but first, we got the name from, I believe, the property profile, and the property profile has all the county details on the trace, which is on white pages. And we went through all the names. There's 3 names on there. Went through all the names and pulled phone numbers for each one, and it gave us a list of phone numbers to call. I got lucky with the first phone call, and I didn't have to go through 20 different numbers. But in case you need to, you can go through them all. But I got a hold of the guy and send the flyer over to him, so he's looking at it now, and we'll see if he'll get us a better first.
Actually, William, can I bring you on the line real quick? Are you in a quiet place? If William's in a quiet place, and I'll just bring him on so everybody can hear him explain it, because it's his lead. And if not, he's in a quiet place. All right, so hold on 1 second. I'll just bring William on. All right, William.
All right, can you guys hear me?
There we go, William. Yeah, there we go.
All right. So actually, I found this lead through Zillow. I was researching different leads. One of the things me and James kind of discuss is anything most recent on Zillow, don't touch. Try to go back far as you can in the dates, 100, 200 days back, because you have a little bit more room as far as negotiating price. But I took some luck with this one because it was recent. But I was familiar with the area.
It's less than 30 days on market. So
yeah, I was familiar with the area, and I was actually showing someone else the system at school, and I was like, well, let me just plug in this random property, and I saw this one, and I called the agent, had a conversation with him, and told him, hey, I want to set up a time to get out there and check it out. So it was through Zillow.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's through Zillow. So you saw it. You saw it was listed. It had only been on market for 14 days, but you went ahead and called on them anyway.
Yeah, because it was in part of like a training in a sense, because someone was interested in the FlipLogic system. So I was
okay. Well, the fact of the matter is what you did was you saw it was a fixer. Yeah, you know, the days on market was pretty short. I mean, it's 14 days on market, perhaps, because this was maybe a week ago you called on it. So maybe it was like 3 weeks on market. So that 3 weeks on market, you called on it. Did they express any kind of like anything that stood out to you when you talked to them?
Yeah. So one of the things was, as I tried to get them to give me as much information about the property and about the seller as possible on my initial phone call, so I can kind of use it if I need to do like a price reduction and things like that. So, you know, I was like, hey, all transparency, like just give me the full spiel on what's the deal with the property. Said the lady passed, she left it to the neighbor, and the neighbor really didn't want to deal with it. She wanted to get it off her hands as fast as possible. But she didn't want to give it away. I was like, okay, perfect. You know, then he told me how old the lady was, and he started giving me a backstory in regards to that. Then I asked the question, has he had any other offers? He said they have had an offer at $750, but the seller rejected it. I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna run my numbers. I'm gonna get back to what my number is, and then we can go from there. So I input the system. James worked his magic, and he came back and said that we can do 750. So I said, hey, I know that your seller rejected 750, but this is what my number is. And
got it.
I went out and walked the property, and when I walked the property, I created a bond and a relationship with the seller, whether she was willing to accept the 750.
I see. Okay, let's kind of reverse engineer how that went, because we did get it under contract at 750, which ended up being too high. So let's talk about that real quick. So part of the issue was so as you can tell, on title, it's only 1,200 square feet, right? 1,200 square feet, there's definitely not enough juice in it at that price point, because that puts you at 910. Let's just go ahead. Let me just reverse it all the way through here so everybody can see what the thinking was on this, right? So we're at 1,200 square feet. 1,200 square feet. So if we're at 1,200 square feet, and here's the cool thing about this. If I go to comps, I can, this is what it said our average, you know, based off the average of all of those comps, although these are, look, we're only 1,200 square feet. We've picked comps that are much larger, you know, by more than 200 square feet. So that's obviously going to throw off the price per square foot, right? Probably the most applicable is going to be this one down here, because we're a price match, or sorry, a size match on square footage. So if we did that, it's going to suggest 900, right? Based on that, 900 based on that. And then we would typically look at this at $40 a foot for the repair costs. For an older property that needs everything, that's above median, or in the median. Well, this is above median. So that would put our repair costs at $48,000. And let's see here. That would also suggest that we would need to sell it at 705. All right. Everybody with me so far? So this is what it looks like on the surface, right? It's 1,200 square foot property. We matched it up with the 1,200 square foot comp, right? We used $40 a foot because it needs everything. $40 a foot is kind of our awful for, you know, Southern California, like in the $500,000 to below $1 million ARV range. And then the system defaults everything else. It defaults to 80/10. It defaults to 10% ROI. So a max rehab price would be $705. That would allow a rehab profit, net rehab profit of $81,000, rehab ROI of 10%. And there you have it. So we figured, well, maybe we could sell it for more. And the reason why I think this is so funny is because our investors, despite what I'm about to show you right now, our investors came back at about this number, right? William, you've got an investor who you sent it to who said he was interested in the low sevens, right? And then he told you 710 specifically. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We have another investor of ours who's a fund. They can close in 5 days, or they're willing to close this Friday. They said 660 to 690. For all of us who are on the line, we all know in negotiations, it's actually a good idea to give a range. It's actually a good idea, because when somebody hears a range, just like we heard a range, 660 to 690, what does that tell you? They'll pay 690, right? But psychologically, they go, oh, you know, 660, your mind goes, oh, that's low, but they're willing to pay 690. 690 is still kind of low, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's funny how that does something to the mind. So I asked the investor if they would come up to 700, and I'm not going to, I'll tell you when that happened, but yes, they said they'll come up to 700. But anyways, this is a pretty good consensus. We didn't push for this at first, did we? We pushed. So I'm gonna tell you what we kind of explored here. So there is a 350 square foot addition that's unpermitted that could be permitted, right? So that would put us to 1,550. That would now put our ARV in the same range with these comps. We don't have the bed and bath count. We've got the size, you know, and they could if by spending more money on construction, they could reconfigure the floor plan, you know, get that unpermitted addition, most likely, possibly, not definitely, but they could probably get it permitted. That's going to take time and money and planning to get done, right? So that's all out of cost. So then that's why we bumped this up to about $100,000, because they're going to need to go through all that. And that number could be more. Williams' investor said they were thinking somewhere around 150. Our other investor said maybe somewhere around 130, 140. So maybe they were going to spend about $100 a foot, right, to do all that. And if they did do all of that, typically when people are adding on square footage and they're reconfiguring floor plans and they're doing more work, they typically want more money, right? So that's why our system, when it goes above $1 million ARV, it jumps up to a 15% ROI. So that would put it around the 733 number. So we were pitching it. We were actually trying to be pretty optimistic. And I think we were pitching, I think we were up somewhere around 837. I think it's because we were using $100,000. This just goes to show you how you can be off, but still get a deal done, right? So we were trying to push it. This is a hotter area. So we were trying to be more aggressive with it, less conservative. So that's why we had the highest ARV you could justify. If you spent more money, like, you know, $100,000, $65 a foot almost, based off of that and a 10% ROI, you could sell it to a rehabber at $825, right? The property's listed at $850. So that makes sense, right? 850, we could sell it below list, because that's the other problem. If the property's listed, don't bother trying to sell it to other people at ask or above ask, because it's just not a deal, right? Investors are saying, hey, if this thing's listed, you know, obviously the whole world has seen it. In order for it to be a deal, it's got to be below the asking price. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
So we said 750 sounds doable. Let's go ahead and put it under contract at 750, because even at 15%, it's 783, right? Just 15%, 783, 750 still works. Is everybody with me? We then put the property out, right? We marketed it to, and well, we put it under contract, right? I think it was like 4-day inspection, 14-day close, something like that. We put the property out to our investors. Our investors came back and said, you know, because everybody, you have to remember, all investors are different. Everybody's going to, you know, underwrite this ARV differently. They're going to have different construction costs. Some guys have their own in-house, on staff general contractor. Other guys have, you know, third-party general contractors that they work very closely with. And so their costs are all a little different, right? But from everybody who was interested, they said they didn't see the 1-1 number. You know, they all wanted to kind of, for when you start going over $1 million ARV, your pool of investors, buyers gets very small, just because, especially in the market now that it's changing, everybody wants the most risk-free transaction. They want the fastest transaction. So they just want to buy, fix, and flip. When you start talking about additions, plans, going through the city for permits to approve unpermitted structure, right? When you start creating that kind of scenario, your investor pool is going to shrink for who wants it. So here's the good thing, though, is it's good news and bad news. So the good news is we put it under contract. We got some investors that were interested. The bad news is all of our investors say, hey, I don't want to play this deal that way. I want to play the deal for a 900,000 ARV, right, in the nines, and basically what the first scenario was, right? And if they can get that bonus room permitted, you know, that's more money for them, because they're going to spend the time, money, and effort to go do that, right? They're basically saying we shouldn't give the seller that money. If the seller wants to go get that planned out, permitted, and wants to come back with it that way, then sure, then we'll give it value. But they're not going to give value to square footage that's not permitted. Everybody with me on that? Does that make sense? So that puts us back into this range. It takes us out of this comp, Clyde, takes us out of this comp, takes us out of this one, which is right across the street, which we were giving the most weight to at 1107, 1550. They just were going to need to reconfigure the floor plan to take it from a 2-bed to a 4-bed and take it from a 1-bath to a 3-bath. So we're playing more for this, right? We've got this square footage, but they may need to add a bedroom and a bath to get there, right? Also, this one's not Spanish style. People do give more value to a Spanish style home, but now we're back to, all right, let's not go to being fancy and creative and complex. Simple systems scale. So if we're going back to simplicity, which is we're using the same 750 price per square foot as this comp right here. This is 750. So I'm just going based off the average, what the system just said right now. This sold at 910, 750 a foot. It is a couple square feet larger. I'm just using the 900. I'll click on that pencil so I can edit this. I'll go back to analyze. Again, I'm not going to get fancy with it. I'm just putting $40 a foot. It might be a little more than that, 48,000 for that home. But if I went back to just our regular underwriting, it puts us back at 705. All right, which is where we've got two investors who will buy it right around there, right? So that's the reality. I know when we opened up this conversation, we had James. James just recently reached out to this guy for this 910 comp, right? This is the 750 a foot comp. They bought it for 740. So why wouldn't they be able to buy ours for 740? Maybe they paid too much for that. Because look how thin that is. What? They bought this one for 740. The exit was 910.
Right. So yeah, it was initially listed at 700 though, and they ended up paying out 740 on that comp.
On that, okay. So
yeah, they had some competition.
Yeah, so that's some competition. I mean, if I copied those numbers, and who knows what their construction budget was on that, but if they paid 740, look, I mean, their ROI was only 6.5%, 55,000. So we pitched it to those guys at 740 because they weren't on our investor list. We sent it to them after the fact, and we sent it to them at 740 because it's like, it doesn't look like it made sense. Maybe they overpaid it and they thought they were going to get closer to $1 million as possible, right? And then they ended up getting 910. So they didn't lose money, but they didn't. That's probably they may not have been expecting that number. Actually, let's look at what the list. Can we see what well, they listed it. They listed it for resale at 900, and they got 910.
Yeah.
So
they
got what they were hoping to get. They may have paid cash. If they paid cash, then you can see their ROI would have went up. Yeah, it's almost 10%. So it's still a good deal at 740 if they even off this conservative number.
Yeah.
So we'll see what they're willing to do. All right. So bottom line, so we're waiting to hear back from them at 740, but we do have what we know for sure is we've got somebody at 710 and we've got another investor at 700, right? So 710 and 700, but guys, you've got a purchase contract at 750, right? Go fish, dead deal, right? There's no dollars in that deal, right? So it leaves us with basically one option. Well, two options. One is cancel, right? And the second one is obviously to go back to the seller and present what we do have, right? And William and I actually conference called the agent this morning. Because William's like, hey, what do you want to do? And I just said, let's call them, or if you want, I'll be on the line with you. So we did a 3-way, and this is a great way to do it. I always like doing it this way. I give them the good news, bad news bit, right? Good news is we like the deal. We're willing to move forward. But here's what we found. Square footage, the extra bonus room that's unpermitted, we can't give value to it because we don't know if we will ever be able to get it permitted, right? It's time and money to do it if the city will let us permit it, right? So we got to buy what is, right? Not what could be. So what is a 900,000 ARV, right? 910 ARV. I told him we got to spend 100 to 150,000. I think I told him like 130. I said that's subjective. It could be more, could be less. But I told him the fact of the matter is we're willing to close. We're willing to remove all contingencies, and we're willing to close Friday, but we got to be at 660. I said that's the bad news. Bad news is we got to be at 660. Good news is we can still move forward, do the deal, close this Friday. And then William, what did the agent say?
I mean, he was a little, I don't know if she's gonna do it. But he still, he has to still present. So he took it back to her. And then he came back to me and said that we needed to if we can come up to 700, she's willing to accept that.
There you go. So I told him that's still she just came down 50,000 just like that, right?
Yeah.
So that's what did we do next? Or what did you do next?
Then, I was back and forth in email with another buyer. So I was like, hey, well, if we can, do we stay at that number or do we come up a little bit? Because based on the two buyers that we have, one at 7 and one at 710, I mean, we have some flexibility to come up, but still not eat into the profit. So you came up with a creative idea as far as the number, coming up with the 6.7 or 6.725 or coming up with like
6.72 500.
Mixing the numbers up a little bit, and magically she accepted at that number.
Yeah. So we said that, and we came up with something else to support it, something colorful. We said, we said we're not comfortable with paying. We basically said 660 is the right number. While we're uncomfortable with some things about the property, we would be willing to come up to 672 500 to get it done today. Right. And that's when, so you sent that over by text, and then they replied back and said they'll accept that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and that's
so again, why 6.7? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no. So yeah, that was pretty much the feedback from it.
Right. So why 672 500? Well, it's really kind of an arbitrary number. It's more than 5,000, right? Instead of going from 660 and saying no, we're firm. Obviously, we know we could come up as high as. I mean, we've got pretty much a for sure deal at 700. So we know we could come up to 699 500 and only make $500 on it if we want, right? So we chose 672 500. That still leaves what is that? That still leaves like $27,500 for a wholesale fee, for an assignment fee, right? Still leaves $27,500 in the deal for us, for getting the deal done. And it's more than 5,000. It's more than 10. It was just a weird number where we can say, hey, this is our highest and best. And it's a number that looks like, okay, they tried to come up to their highest and best number. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean she has to accept it. It's all psychological. But obviously we want to make money on the deal. And if she said no, we could always say, well, I'm curious what number would work for you, right? Because then we could always try to come up a little more. Does that make sense? Everybody with me on that? So if you guys are still with me, if you would put in the chat box or the Q&A, just say, yeah, I'm with you, or good stuff. Or if you have a question, shoot us a question. So that's how we came up to that. Say that again.
Just a heads up, since we're talking about the deal, you should have a DocuSign from the agent. He said, we're super stoked to do the deal with you guys. We're happy that we agreed to a number. I just DocuSign the addendum for signature.
Okay. So let me pull that up. But while I pull that up, I'm just going to look at the Q&A box here real quick. Damon asked, how did you find the added footage? How did we find the added footage, guys?
Well, the 300 square footage it was told to me by the agent. He said, hey, there's a unpermitted addition in about 300 so square feet. So just want to give you the heads up, outside of the original square footage of the home.
Okay.
So that's how I found out about the add-on.
Did he tell you that on the initial call, or was it like on a follow-up call, or?
It was the initial call.
Okay, so on the initial call, so Damon, that's how that was discovered. Was William picked up the phone, called the agent, and had a conversation. Hey, tell me about the seller. Why are they selling? What's the situation? Tell me about the condition of the home. What's the situation? And through that, he discovered that, one, this was an inheritance. Somebody just died recently. The property needs work, and there is some unpermitted square footage there. So that's how that all came to be. And I know it's like, dang, sometimes you got to pick up the phone and do some work, and it does. People can suck sometimes, right? but that, it's you got to work the deal sometimes. So picking up the phone is, it makes sense. And I know we're not all. I know other people here are fine with doing that, but it just goes to show you in this situation how that played. Hold on here, guys. I know I didn't see the DocuSign for that yet. He's probably still sending it over. I was hoping to pull that up so people could see what that looked like. Oh, you know what? I just got it. So hold on here. This is so everybody can see. Let me switch back to my email. This is so everybody can see how we were in contract at 750, right? But we always have an inspection period because that gives us the ability to do our inspections, run the deal by our investors. And then if something is discovered during that inspection, like in this case, our ARV was off, right? Because our square footage was off because we're trying to get the seller the highest and best number we could, right, guys? We were trying to get them the highest and best number possible. So we made assumptions. Based on those assumptions, we put the deal under contract, and then we did our discovery, right, with our investors. We marketed the deal to our investors, got a few of them out there, got their feedback. Their feedback was too high, need a better price. It needs to be at whatever it was, 700 basically, right? That then gave us the ability to go back to the seller, have that conversation, which is not easy it gets easy as you do this. But we had to go back to the seller and just say, hey, good news, bad news. Here's the good news, here's the bad news, right? And then the agent was, and William, I think that was a little more optimistic than what I remember it as. I remember the agent being like, oh, that's not going to work. And I just, hey, it may not work, but guess what? You have a non-contingent backup, don't you? So if she wants to put it back on the market, put it back out there, try to get a better number, I totally get that. But, this is good news that you have a non-contingent backup offer and keep us in mind. And he said, no, I get that, but he's like, I don't think she's going to go for it. I said, okay, well, I said, get back to us, let us know. And then, of course, that's when he came back to us with a number, didn't he? Because he was either going to come back to us with a cancellation, which no harm, no foul, or he's going to come back to us saying, yep, she will take your 660, or no, it's got to be something else. So he came back with 7. We said 7's not going to work, but we would be willing to come up 672, 500, if we can get this wrapped up today. And then this is what it looks like, right? He sends over this addendum after having that conversation with his seller. And so this is just an addendum. Addendum says the purchase price shall be 672, 500. All other terms of the original purchase agreement to remain the same. Does that make sense? So by signing this, say that again.
I don't think we can see it. I don't think we can see it.
The screen froze.
Okay. Oh, gotcha. Hold on. Let me help you. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yeah, there you go.
Signature part. There we
go. Hit it down. There.
Good. Let me see if anybody else jumped on that. I see some other guys are raising their hands. Let me see if I can just pull this up real quick. Let's see. I know we had somebody here. I just want to make sure nobody's neglected. Real quick, let me go back to my screen here. Londra Smith, he's got his hand up. Londra, if you would use the use the chat box or the Q&A box to get your question in. I saw you were raising your hand for a question, so I don't know if he's still on there, but I hope that helps. All right, same with everybody else. Use the Q&A box if you would, or the chat box, get your question in, and I'll be sure to answer it. Okay, so that was the verbal, right? You got to get on the phone, go back and forth. And then once they said 700, that was a verbal. We said we'd come up 672, 500. You know, if we could get it wrapped up today, they came back with a verbal. Hey, we'll take it. And then of course, then it gets formalized on an addendum. And the addendum says purchase price shall be 672, 500. And then just by signing that, boom. That now has created, that it now took our original purchase contract of $750,000 and it dropped it. I don't know how much of a price drop that is, but it dropped it to 672, 500. Now we just turned a dead deal into what? We turned it into dollars, right?
27,000.
We just turned in 27,500. So that's how, I mean, that's how deals can be amended, right? And that's how money's made on paper in real estate anyway, with a purchase contract like that in this situation. So that's that. So with that being said, our next, nope, don't want to do that. Let's see, anybody else have any other questions? I'm just going to get rid of some of these because I know I answered all of those. If you guys have any questions, get them into the chat queue, the Q&A. The next thing that's going to happen after this is we'll end up writing up the assignment to assign this contract to our investor. And that'll happen tomorrow. We're going to get our investor back through there for their final walkthrough. And then when they're ready to wire non-refundable deposit, then we'll give them the assignment to sign and the wire instructions, and then they can wire their deposit in, and then we're going to push to close this Friday.
Now, would it be, so it'll close what, Thursday and fund Friday? Or?
Yeah, so LA County is a county where it can't fund and record the same day. Recording means, you know, the title records the grant deed, right? And then the title changes to the new owner that's recording. And then of course, escrow can disperse, you know, all the funds from there. So a property can't fund, meaning buyer can't wire the closing balance in and then for it to record same day. I know San Diego can do that, San Diego County, and I just forget which counties can do that. But probably typically most counties, you got to wire the closing funds the day before, and then it can record and disperse the next day. If it records in the morning, it can disperse same day. If it records later in the day, then they'll end up dispersing probably the next day. So if they disperse the next day, I'm guessing it's probably going to disperse Monday. Yeah. So if they do wire transfer disbursements, you'll get your money on Monday. If they do checks, you either have to drive in and pick it up, or if they put the check in the mail, I mean, you may not get your check till Friday.
Yeah.
But anyways, that is how it's done, son. Cool. So that'll be a good deal and a good payday. So now it's just a matter of the hard work is over on that one. Now it's we just gotta get back in there tomorrow morning to wrap that up.
Yeah. So this is the good example of a I guess joint venture or a deal partner going good.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's you can see how every deal is different, right? Every deal is different. Let me just cut back to my screen here. Every deal is different. Some deals are very easy, right? Some deals are, hey, it was listed for 850. The seller's motivated. They'll come down to 750. It's like, there's nothing funky. There's no funky unpermitted additions or anything like that. It's just a very easy to support ARV, right? It's a very easy to estimate repair cost, $40 a foot. And then it's a very easy exit price, right? Like whatever, 740 or whatever it was before. We were at like 820, and you market it, and you've got people who are interested. Maybe it's a little off. No, not 820. I need to be at 810 or 800 or whatever. Maybe it is 820. They walk it, they like it. You send them the assignment, they sign that, they wire a non-refundable deposit, easy breezy, right? No going back and forth, no renegotiating, no having to, sweet talk or do any of that. And then other times deals are, they're like this. It's like, oh, we called it wrong. We just, it is what it is. And you don't have to be perfect. What you do need to do is you need to be able to at least do your numbers, right? Have your process, right? Comp it, come up with a repair number, have it be supported. It needs to have support. It can't be just some number you picked out of the air. Once you've got support, you've got a number. Now you can make the offer to the seller, put it under contract, market the deal to buyers, get them over there, get their feedback. And then if you're off, you're off. Make sure what they're saying makes sense, right? That they're not just trying to blow smoke up your shorts. And if it does make sense, then now just use that as your leverage to now give that to the seller to give them the good news, bad news. You always want to create a path forward. You never want to just create oh, sorry, it's not going to work, Mr. Seller, we got to cancel, right? And then you also don't want to create the, hey, we need it at 660. And then they're just like, screw you. Like you just guys are just, you're lowballing or whatever, right? You're way off. It's true, we were way off. So you do need to you're dealing with people at the end of the day. You gotta massage it a little bit. So hopefully the banter back and forth on this one was pretty helpful for everybody, because it was actually a good example of taking a dead deal and turning it into dollars. And I go over that in the book too. I actually go over that in the classroom on some other deals, but this is just one that's playing out in real time on a deal partnering deal with William. So cool. So glad we got to do that. And with that being said, let's take a look back at the Q&A board, see if anybody else has any questions. Damon says it's very helpful. Helpful, and it's fun. Isn't it fun? You get a little rush from it today, William? Maybe not.
I definitely did.
All right.
I was on the road and go, so.
Yeah. Yeah, a little adrenaline rush. Adrenaline's always good. So, as long as, like I said, you can get good supported feedback from your investors. If they're a little vague, or if they just give you a number, ask them why that number, ask them to justify it, or jump on the phone with them, whether you're getting it from them via text or email or giving them a phone call. People like to communicate in different ways, but it's definitely good to get some feedback from them. And then you can use that with your seller for the good news, bad news approach, right? Good news is we want to do the deal. We can close by this time, we can remove contingencies, but bad news is because of whatever the reasons are, right? In this case, backed up to light industrial, the add-ons unpermitted. We're not going to go chase unpermitted living square footage and give value to it. We have to value what's there and permitted now, right? and that we were too low on our original estimated repair costs. And because of those reasons, we need to be at 660. And if that doesn't work for you, we understand, but we at least wanted to give you our number of how we could move forward. Makes sense. So then that way it allows them to understand where you're coming from, and that you're willing to walk away from the deal, right? You're not trying to like strong arm them into it, but at the same time, you're letting them know that, you're more than welcome to shop it again, relist it, present it to other buyers. But, we're pretty confident that you're going to end up, right where we're at now. So if you'd like to save time, we're willing to move forward, remove contingencies and close, but it just needs to be at this number. And then of course that starts the renegotiation. They came down, we came up a little bit, and then, we obviously know what our target is, because which was at around 700, because we already have that from our investors. So, all right. Well, we are at 1 hour and 2 minutes, and all questions are exhausted. So it looks like we hit our 2 requirements for this Q&A show. So with that being said, if nobody has any questions in closing, then we'll go ahead and close this out. And I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays. I know Hanukkah's over. Those 8 crazy nights have come and gone, but I know Christmas is approaching. So everybody next week, I guess we have one more Monday, Christmas Eve. Real quick, for everybody who's on, do you want to do another show Christmas Eve? Do you want to do another one of these Christmas Eve, or no? Is everybody going to be traveling? Everybody going to be gone? If you guys could
I'm open for it.
Give me a little help, hit me in the chat box. You'll be here, yes. You won't be here, because I don't want to come on and do this if I'm all alone. Maurice Rogers will be here. Clayton will be here. Anybody else? William, what about you? You traveling? William's going to be here with another deal.
Yeah. I told James
Let's
I got
see, James.
So I'm behind.
What was that, William?
I told you I was going to do at least 2 deals or 3 deals before the end of the year. So I only got 1. If this closes, so I got to get 1 more.
Yeah.
Damon will be here. All right.
This
I like
Spalding went in contract and sold in about a week, so you should be able to get another one done.
All right. So I got confidence.
Clayton says, great for William. Good job. So cool. It sounds like everybody else is having fun with this and wants to be here. I'll be here then too. So I will see you all again next Monday for our Christmas Eve special FlipLogic real estate show. So for those of you who can't, we'll see you on the next week after that. So everybody take care. Thanks, William and James, for being here. Really enjoyed it. All right. Thanks, everybody. Signing off. Good night.